Welcome to a bonus episode of the Gear Podcast, video edition, supplemental Reader's Digest version. I'm Leon Todd.
I'm Troy Abulan.
And thank you to everybody who's been following and listening to the podcast recently. We've been loving it. We did want to fill you all in on a few little things that we kind of talk about all the time on the podcast, namely here at Troy Studio HAMMERSPACE. There's some pretty fun stuff happening in here. We often reference it, so we thought it would be kind of nice to give you this like video supplemental. So when we start talking about Troy's amp switcher or his studio setup or the big rack of amps, you sort of know what we're talking about. We're going to make a little bit of noise in this one. This will go up as a video podcast as well. If you're not already following the Gear Podcast, I'll put a link in the video description. Troy, shall we kind of talk about why you did this and what it is, and then we'll make a few noises for the people?
All right, why I did this? Because I left high school and I have no other skills. I thought music was, is that what you mean? No.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, so the studio, I've been here for 5 years. It's 5 and a bit
It's already
years.
5 years.
Leon helped me paint it and helped me move in.
I didn't do that much work.
Leon did a lot of help actually with this place, and so did Cam, friend of Leon's band. Member of Leon's band.
Member of Leon's band, and also a friend of the band as
Trying
well.
to like, I could get a friend of the...
And a friend of the podcast as well.
So they helped get me in here, but yeah, I mean, behind, I don't know how visible it is. We've got the slate control surface.
I'm gonna do this, Troy. I'm gonna move out of the way.
Basically, the system in terms of the studio gear is we've got the Avid Matrix Studio as the main interface. The Orion is doing a lot of extra ins and outs for the system. The SSL Summy Mixer is mostly for mixing, as well as a little bit for guitar tracking, which I mentioned on the podcast. And then, yeah, the rest of it, I mean, patch bays and mic preamps and stuff. The audience there are not used too much, just what I need. If I've got a drum tracking session or something here, I might use them. More mic preamps up here, outboard gear, etc.
Just lots of compressors, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really get used as much anymore, to be honest. It's semi for show, mostly vocals and maybe acoustic guitars for the outboard compressors. Sometimes I use one of them, the overstayer on the mix, but I like a lot of plugins and it's easy for recall.
Now, Troy, give us your honest opinion. How you're liking the Slate Ravens?
They look awesome.
They do look pretty awesome.
No,
do you think
they're actually really cool. I had some issues with them with my old computer, and for that it was specifically using 2 of them. It didn't like my old Mac Pro, so from that I sort of stopped using the touch functionality of them as much as I had originally used it when I just was using the one. But they're really cool products. I found the macro stuff on them really useful, but now I use a Stream Deck with SoundFlow and a Stream Deck. So
we'll have to do a little demo of that.
Yeah, so that's kind of taken a lot of the functionality for the slates away from me, but they're still really cool. They look awesome.
What are you using for monitors, mate?
So it's the Focal Twin BEs, 6s, something.
Do you have a sub?
I got a sub. It was set up so poorly for like at least the last 12 months with the crossover and whatnot, so it's now bypassed. Because I've got the Matrix here, I use the iPad with the Pro Tools control app, which conveniently sits in the space where you would put the Slate monitor controller, because the actual block that fills that space was lost many years ago, not too long after I actually got the console. So the iPad sits in there, and that controls the monitoring for the studio monitors and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, very useful, but I do have a button on there so I can flick the sub on and off if I want to check it. But that's pretty much it.
We got the rack of amps over here.
The purple light's sitting on a Synergy Bogner Ecstasy module.
There you go.
As you do.
I also, you know who I want to give a shout out on this episode, Troy?
Who's that?
James Lugo, because I've been watching so much James Lugo, and it's mind-blowing that James is even aware of who we are. And he's been using some of my Axe-FX blocks and watching some videos.
I don't know if he knows who I am, but I
well,
know
James Lugo, this is Troy Nababan.
Hey, man.
And many, many years ago when you did that amp shootout, Troy showed it to me, and pretty sure it changed our lives. So
that was a big catalyst for a lot of what we have ended up doing, was that amp shootout.
And then you look over here and you kind of go, well, what's happening in here? We've got
bits.
Well, at the top you got some fun stuff. There's a new Sin 6505, which is sounding slamming.
Yep.
This is pretty awesome. Does any of this work, the ADA stuff?
They work to varying degrees.
So original MP1.
Yeah, that was my
MP1 Classic.
original one. The MP1 Classic, I actually haven't flicked it on since I bought it. One day I'll get that all sorted out.
This is a dual rectifier that we bought off a friend of ours, Seb. Shout out to Seb if you're watching. We love you, Seb. They painted it pink and it sounds awesome and it looks outrageous. You all know what rectos do. This one's different to mine. This is newer than mine. I have a Rev G.
Yeah, that's a 3-channel.
This is a 3-channel one. So yeah, and it's got a very kind of different, well, there's a few things that are different about it. They're definitely in the same sort of ballpark. Then if you were listening to the most recent episode of the podcast, we were talking about 5150. So this is Troy's script signature.
And you know what?
5150.
That one about 12 months ago as well, about this time last year.
Yep.
I got that from Cash Converters.
And then this one, the secret weapon in the arsenal.
It's everybody's favorite amp. If you find one, you should just buy it because they're going... Well, I don't know how cheap they are now, but there was a period when no one wanted them and everyone hates them online. But they sound really good. I don't know directly compared to a Marshall if it sounds that close, but it's just such a great sounding amp. And like I like the clean side of it. I like the dirty side of it. And I don't really know what else to say. I think it definitely benefits from the right cab.
Much like the other thing in here, the Splawn. So what, stiletto?
Yeah, the stiletto. And I got that amp about the same time I moved in here, and I traded a Mesa Nomad for that, which I wasn't using. So
the Nomad's kind of a famously not
also
popular Mesa thing, isn't it?
And I actually had a chat to another Nomad owner not too long ago who still doesn't really like his, but it was okay. I didn't like the gain in it. The clean side was pretty okay. It's just so heavy. I'd love to know with my one what speakers it had in it, because at the time I wasn't that interested. But it probably had EVs or something. It was the freaking heaviest amp. And it was a 110 one, so it had a power transformer in the back, external. That would add a few extra kilos to it. So.
And then your old Marshall. This thing is a savage beast. It's a great sounding old Marshall.
Yeah, it's 77 JMP, the Willie Westlake mod, which who knows what that means. It could have literally been nothing. Did you talk about the Spawn?
The Spawn. That's pretty interesting. There's a lot of Spawn on Ragdoll Back to Zero from memory, like boosted with a tight drive or something.
Yeah, tight drive, I think.
It's a very finicky amp. They're pretty cool.
I was playing it today before you got here, and again, if you put the right speaker on it, I think when people hate the mids and talk about the weird mids, I think it's because they're running with a V30. That's my estimation, because with a greenback, today I was running it with greenback and an G12H 70th anniversary and the Warehouse Green Beret, which is yours. It sounded great through all those, and it didn't have that weird mids sort of thing about it, which is really strange. It's to me, whenever I put it up with vintage 30s, I can't get it to sit right. And if you notice, like, look at the EQ on it at the moment, Uncle Lee, you don't have to point the camera at it, but where the mids and treble are, it's really, really picky on certain speakers, and it seems to work great with the Warehouse Green Beret. Whereas you can put them at any place and it actually works okay.
Yeah.
Whereas some other things I've tried, it's really kind of funky. So that in January, so I got it as a gigging amp as well as a studio thing. I actually didn't anticipate I'd use it in the studio so much, but I have used it for all of the tracking sessions I've done this year, and it's been really, really awesome.
And then the hinge on which everything pivots is this KHE. I need to get one of these or some variation of it, because the way this works. What is it? 8 heads, 4 cabinets?
Yeah, so 8 into 4. Actually, Leon, I have a spare amp switcher. What's it called? Delisle,
something like that.
One of those. That's a 4 into 4. This one's MIDI selectable. And we talked about it on the podcast, but there's like a couple of like the main players in the amp switcher thing in terms of like this, because you got the radial one is much smaller. It's only 2 into 1. But if you want to get more than that, you got the KHE, the Ampete, the Kahayan, and they all do similar things. This one it just happened to work for me in terms of features and stuff. And I really would like to get another one, maybe like just a straight 8 speaker one instead of the like 8 heads. I don't really need that many heads at the moment.
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite little things to draw, with some very expensive pedals in there, as we all know.
Well, you know, the Bad Monkey's worth 3 times what the rest of them are worth.
Exactly.
As well as all the amps.
The Mud Killer is sick. That's just such a great boost with any of these amps.
So much. Like that in front of the Splawn sounds really good. The Splawn's got so much bottom. It's just a really great way of taming that. The Rat, I don't know if I'm a Rat guy. I tried it again recently because, Nuno Betancourt, if nothing else, forget JHS's hour-and-a-half video about it.
Nuno done it good.
Yeah, he likes a Rat, so that's all you need to know. The CS3 is also a pedal that I love. And that, do you know why I got that pedal, Uncle Leon? Do you remember why?
Mate, Uncle Kip Winger.
Kip Winger, the man.
Well, you sang Miles Away with him on stage, which was pretty rad.
Sure did. That was.
But what was
that was the 2 days before the pandemic really fucked the world.
So the Kip Winger trick, ladies and gentlemen, is you
crank it up.
You get your acoustic guitar and a CS3 and you turn all of these knobs all the way up, and it's like a great live acoustic guitar sound.
The acoustic guitar sound was really
and
good.
Kip's a very, very good acoustic guitar player as well. Friend of the channel, Johnny C, Anarchy Audio, Workhorse Professional Overdrive. We've talked about that.
Good. Tracking a song, you plug into the DI, into the Little Labs. That signal goes straight into the Matrix, into one of the XLR inputs in the Matrix, and that goes to Pro Tools. So always track a clean DI as well as a dirty guitar signal. The output or the link through or the whatever you want to call it goes into the Rocktron Patchmate. This is all pre-switcher. So if you want to put on your boost, like your $6,000 Bad Monkey, then you can just press the button on or bypass it if you don't want to use it. If you do want to eliminate all of this stuff, then I can take this cable and plug it straight into the front of the KHE.
That's an old school bypass, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. However, in this current situation, the rear output of the Rocktron Patchmate goes into the rear input of the KHE. So it's always plugged in, no matter what. The tuner output goes to the tuner, so that's really helpful. And then these first five amplifier heads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are the ones in the rack. So Mesa, 5150,
the mountain of amps.
Marshall. 6 is this one. And then I have 7 set up as like a floating one at the moment because that little like here thing is a perfect size.
I guess if someone comes in to record some guitar and they have their favorite amp, they sit it there and you do that.
Correct. And then you can select your cabinets as you like. Also, we didn't mention it, but I've got the 2 Notes Torpedo Reload down here as a speaker attenuator, which is quite useful to do exactly what you think. Like drop the amp volume down a little bit, and it has an XLR output because it's also a load box, so that can go to Pro Tools if I wanted to use IRs for whatever reason.
Or to recab something later.
Yeah, I did that for a little bit, but I've got so much in the way of speakers and microphones and stuff, it's sort of more fun to use all that. And just while we're here as well, Uncle Leon, what I do have, which you can get a little shot of this guy, is... Are we on the right network? Sorry, mate. Just give me a bloody half a sec, mate.
There's also heaps of fun pedals over here.
So, because
Because sticking stuff in front of amps and making loud noises is good.
Lots of good stuff. What I have over here on my phone, this is a little app that I built using the Soundflow software.
Oh, nice.
And I can press the button. If I wanted to say put the Recto on, I can press the Amp 1 Recto button, and you hear it click, and you can see it changes the...
Let me just get a nice little shot of that, mate.
In fact, let's just... they're doing this. Hey, Uncle Leon, do you want to hear the Vintage 30 cab?
Yes.
Oop, there you go. There's a Vintage 30. Or here's the Greenbacks cab or the Pinky cab.
How good's that?
So, or the Sim 30. So, the only reason being, I can sit over here at the desk, twiddle the guitar, reamp a guitar sound, and just change the amps as I like, which is really silly, but I mean, why not? What else are you going to do with your time? You just watch TV? What are you going to do while you're watching TV?
Go to Speaker Town.
I watched E.T. for the first time on Monday. I'm 35 years old.
Feel things?
Yeah, actually, I got a little emotional at the end, but I didn't program a Soundflow app while I did that. I tried to show it respect, and it was worth it. The only other thing just to mention about this is because I captured the DI signal alongside the mic'd amp track in Pro Tools, I have an output set up, labeled in the...
That's the other thing, right? You can come straight in. You can press this little button on the little labs.
Yep, and it becomes the reamp.
Becomes a reamper.
So it means there's no other cables that need to be...
Brilliant.
Yeah, it just goes book. Which came in really handy like 2 weeks ago when I was doing a session with a band, and we just played the song, sent that signal through the amp rack so we could just A/B a couple of sounds without having... One really annoying thing, in my opinion, is just the acoustic sound of strings. while you're trying to listen back through studio monitors. You don't really get it in the same way when you have like a loud amp.
Because amps are phenomenally loud.
Yeah, but I like to monitor like at a moderate volume for most things, and you can't do that when you've got
all that extra jangle in there. No, I feel you. I definitely spend a lot more time just with like a looper on or a DI or something and dial stuff in that way, and you learn things.
Yeah, it's way better. I mean, alternatively, I should try this, is just to do everything with headphones when I track guitars, but I'm not going to do that.
No one wants to do that. Let's check out Speaker Town, mate. And thanks to the magic television, here we are. Troy, what's going on in here, mate? There's a lot of cabinets and fun things.
This is the live room.
Also known as Speaker Town.
Currently the Speaker Town. Yeah, I've done a reasonable amount of drums in here. The last 2 Ragdoll singles that were out, we did drums in here, which sounded okay. I'm using a different studio for drums at the moment because it's easy and it's
bigger
close.
room.
And I sort of prefer a bigger room if I can manage it. So yeah, I also have a little vocal booth which is permanently set up with my vocal chains. So this room really is acoustic guitars or other acoustic instruments. Yeah, it's easy enough to leave my cabinets in here for how often people actually have to walk in at the moment.
Now, mate, I got to tell you, I'm getting big Racer X Shark Show vibes with these cabinets.
Of course.
That's exactly why they exist.
Originally, it wasn't like that wasn't the purpose. I got 2 unfinished cabs, like the Tolex have been taken off. That's a JCM 900 cab and that's a JCM 800 cab. So pink is the 900 and the green is the 800. And yeah, the previous owner had pulled all the Tolex off them. I think he wanted like $100 per cab or something like that. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. But I didn't know what I was going to cover him with. So it just so happened that Spotlight had this fabric for relatively cheap. I didn't do a very good job of covering it. It was such a pain in the ass to do. It was so much worse than I thought it was going to be.
Never one of those never again kind of things.
Yeah, but I thought about doing it in like leopard print and stuff, but I think the pink and green sort of suit the personality. So
tell me what speakers are in here, mate.
Right. So this cab freshly opened up even as of this morning while listening to the Backchat podcast with David Wirabunda.
Love you, Wira.
This is a Warehouse Green Beret, and this is a Warehouse Reaper. And despite what the label says, that is not a T75. This is a G12H75, 70th anniversary.
Right, that's the new one you got.
That's the new one I just got. And then this is a greenback. And that greenback, I think it's like early 2000s. It
comes
came out
from
of this cab over here, which happened to be the best sounding one. It's actually really dark sounding, so I liked it. I still think it sounds really good, but I don't know how greenbacky it is, to be honest, in certain other situations.
And then down here, this 1960 vintage cab. This was the cab this is the Back to Zero cab.
Yeah.
Amongst other things.
This is pretty much like I got this cab off eBay when I was about 18. Really, this and my 80A MP1. And it just happens to be a really good sounding, has a really good sounding vintage 30 in it, which is this one over here.
1960 vintage. There you go. So you got a good V30.
Straight cab. I put a creamback, the creamback M in it because I picked one of those up last year. I've had that in a few different cabs, but now it's in this one and it sounds really good. It's a good sort of combo as well. I mean, the thing is with the amp switcher, if I select, like the way I've set it up at the moment, and it can be different to this, but the way I've set it up is it's just like, it's that cab or it's that cab or it's that cab. There isn't like a send it to that cab, send it to that cab. So in this situation, if I want to hear a vintage 30, but I also want to hear what a slightly different flavor is in addition to that, I can at least mic that speaker up and that speaker up.
Mic them both. You can switch to the cab. That's pretty cool.
So that's quite useful. So the 2 bottom ones are still the
V30s. And then what's happening in, you've been calling it Greeny, but I think it's...
Yeah, Pinky and Greeny. What do we say? Oh, the brain?
Pinky and the brain. So what's happening in the brain?
This is, it's just got T75s in it. 2 of them are from a JCM... from the 800 and 2 of them from a 900, so they're slightly different eras. I don't know which one's which, but I know this is the best sounding one.
So that's the good one. Yep. And then what about, is this a Gens Benz cab or Gens Benz?
Gens Benz,
however you say it?
I think I've been saying Gens Benz, but I could be wrong. So that's the one at the bottom. Also got that, like, I've been so lucky. This is, I said this on the podcast, you know this. I only have so much stuff because I happened to pick it up really cheap. Like this was $170, this whole cabinet.
Ridiculous.
And it's really big, like it's ported, it's oversized, it sounds massive. I took this speaker out and put an EV in it, EVM12.
Very
because,
nice.
I really wanted to hear what that speaker sounded like, and it sounds really cool. I've used it for a couple of things, and it's predominantly in that cab because it's the only 8 ohm cab that I've got in here, and that's an 8 ohm speaker, so it just kind of happened to work that way. But I might put it in a 2x12 with another 8 ohm speaker just to make everything 16 ohms, to make everything a bit more easy to control. This is a bit more of a bastard area of amplifiers. This is a Laney, like just some Laney cab with a thingy off it with, what are they called? The 7080s in it that everyone hates, which I gigged with this cab like 2 months ago, and it sounded awesome to the point where I was like, what is everyone complaining about? I thought it sounded fucking awesome. Recorded, I've used Laney cabs before and I haven't liked them as much. They sound a bit weird, but it's often with these things is operator error. So maybe it was just the wrong place, the wrong time, the wrong head. Something.
Is that another Marshall JCM 900 cab?
Yeah, that's another 900 cab. Picked that up this year for like $120. I had to, if you can zoom in a little bit as close as you can get, I had to re-glue the domes back on, the dust caps back on, because they'd all fallen off and come loose. So yeah, it sounds really good as well. I think we demo that when we had the Alto.
I think so, yeah.
And then this is the greenback that I've had this for probably close to 10 years now. It's the early 2000s, early mid 2000s sort of greenbacks cab. And then in this Marshall 1x12, I have the V30 out of that cab.
Right.
So, and I just, it's an open back and I wanted to hear what it sounded like. Currently haven't used it, but hey, it's in there.
Hey, should we hit some amps?
Let's fucking do it, mate. Oh, actually, before we do that, I'll just explain one more thing. The whole place is a bit of a mess at the moment, but these like gravity, what are they called? Cab grabber things are really useful for my setup at the moment, because I've got a lot of options here that all semi-permanently patch into mic preamps.
These are awesome. Look at that.
Yeah, so I've just changed some speakers today, it's looking way more worse for wear. But the fact that I can just move the entire thing around to get into the back of the amps if I need to change cables or whatever, it's just really useful. If I did have a session whereby I wanted to get the cabs as far back on the wall, because I probably wouldn't put a drum kit in here, but acoustic guitar, or just tidy the place up, I can still maintain the speaker, the microphone positions. And this to me, like these stands, even though the mics aren't plugged in, but it takes up too much space. It's really messy, easy to trip over. So yeah, it's one of those things you spend a lot of money to maybe solve a problem that only barely exists, but
it makes your life a little bit nicer.
What else do you do with your money, you know?
Exactly. Spend it on drugs.
Yeah, give it to your kids.